Hey guys, welcome back to the What's Next podcast. Coming to you from beautiful Monterey, California. Today we've got a guest here. I don't know him very well. He's only been in a couple of times. His name is Peter Mentor. I know he's an educator, so we're going to get to know Mr. Peter together. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing great. How are
Good.
you doing?
Good, man. So glad you can be in today.
I'm super glad to be here right now.
You were working today. What's going on?
Oh, teacher, 7th and 8th grade, come in on a Tuesday because we had yesterday off. And it was just, it was a rough one.
Why?
It was a rough one. It just wasn't on my mark. And I had one of the best days I've ever had yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, like electric bikes, West Cliff, East Cliff, Santa Cruz, stopped for some coffee, went over to Crow's Nest, got a bowl of chowder and a margarita, came and took my ex-wife and my daughter out for my daughter's birthday, some Oaxacan food, came home and had some salmon. It was like some good wine.
Perfect day.
It was a really good day. So today was kind of a...
Next day you go back to work like,
Yeah, and the kids are off. There's a rhythm.
I was going to ask you that. Was it you or was it the kids or was it a little bit of both? Probably.
It's a little bit of both because I was a Waldorf teacher. We studied this Rudolf Steiner and this breathing.
What's Waldorf? I don't know what that is.
So Waldorf is an education that started in the 20s in Germany after World War I. Germany was in turmoil.
Turmoil, sure.
So the guy at the Waldorf cigarette factory wanted a different kind of education, so he talked to this guy Rudolf Steiner. Steiner is like a transcendentalist. He's into everything: medicine, architecture, and education. Lots of other things.
Okay.
So the schooling is it's based on the development of children. I studied for 3 years. I went every Friday and Saturday for 3 years, and a month every summer, every day of the week. And studied painting and sculpting and speech and mathematics and writing. It's like a Renaissance school. So and then you take a first grade and you take them all the way through.
I see.
That's the way it's supposed to be. So I actually took a first grade and it went to second, and then I came down here to Pacific Grove and I taught a 3rd through 8th grade with the same kids. So it's like having a family, right?
Sure, right.
Yeah. So and
their families. I'm sure you know their parents.
Oh, I know their parents,
right,
and actually, so I did that for 6 years, and one of my students posted something on Facebook today, and I'm reading it. She's probably maybe 25, and she wrote this amazing piece about taking time out to figure out what she wanted in her life, who she was, the uncomfortableness of being alone, the feeling that has, and then where you go from there. I'm reading it thinking, I don't know what I did, what my influence was, but that was just magnificent because I'm doing that now in my 60s, and she's doing it in her 20s.
Well, I was just talking to somebody about that, and maybe it was you. It's amazing to me sometimes as I'm pushing 60 and I talk to people in their 20s, and they're so, I don't want to say enlightened, but they have a better idea of what I did at that age, I guess. Like you're saying, she's writing about, what it is to be lonely, what is, she's investigating her soul, basically. Yeah. At what age? 22?
Yeah, now she's about 26.
Wow.
Those kids that I taught,
amazing.
I went to, 2 of them got married and had a baby. So I've been doing this a while.
Yeah, right. Sure.
And but it was magnificent. And then I left that. I left that in 2012. And my life was in turmoil. Lost my girlfriend, was losing my place to live, didn't have my job. My ex-wife said, hey, let's go to Kauai. So I'm like, all right. So I fly to Kauai with her and my daughter, had this great time, come back, go straight to Burning Man, burn it for like 9 days straight. I think I slept 10 hours.
Right on.
Came back from that, and 3 weeks later had my spine fused because I had a broken back from when I was 13.
Oh, it wasn't from Burning Man?
No,
okay.
It was from a toboggan on a amphitheater that was iced over in New England back when I was a teenager.
Right.
And it took that long for it to get so bad that my 7th and 8th grade years teaching there, I could barely stand
really?
or sit, so I had a stool.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time, I'm a motion guy anyway, so just sitting still was kind of hard. But 3 months after that surgery, I was skiing and my life exploded. And so that was 2012, I was 51 years old, fell in love, had a kid. I've got a 9-year-old now.
How about that?
I'm 63 years old with a 9-year-old, yeah.
Right on.
So
nothing wrong with that, man. They say keep you young. I don't know if I could keep up. But they say it'll keep you young.
I actually, I've got a motor. You know, I've got a high-speed motor.
Do you?
And finding that energy that could be reflected by another person has been quite difficult. So I've been by myself for 5 years, and so I really understood what this former student, was saying, and how rewarding it is to fall in love with yourself for who you are.
Right.
I have a ring on that a woman gave me when I first started at the school there in 2006, and it's kind of my wedding ring to me.
Right on.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm married to myself.
Right.
Part of Burning Man, one of the 10 principles is radical self-reliance. And that doesn't mean you don't need people or help people or want to be with people. It means that you do as much as you can for yourself to maintain your own equanimity, to your centeredness.
Right.
And so what I've learned is that some of my biggest mistakes in life were just reacting.
Okay.
And not allowing myself to feel the feelings I was feeling.
Sure.
And let that go and be awkward and then move forward.
Right. So break this down for me. You said something about Burning Man and its particular rules, or?
Oh, there are 10 principles of Burning Man. Yeah, 10 principles.
I didn't know anything about that. I thought it was just a party. Everybody showed up. And lit
it depends. If you go just for a party, it's just a party.
Yeah.
But the 10 principles are like radical inclusion. So you're including everybody you can possibly include. Leave no trace is my favorite one because
they didn't
go
follow
in,
that up
take
this
it
year.
out. Oh, they certainly did.
They did? They go back and cleaned it up?
When Burning Man ends, there's a group of people who stay out there for a month.
Oh, okay.
They fine-tooth comb the entire area, and it's huge.
Yeah.
They have a map with either green or yellow or red, and they know the camps. And if you leave something, you get dinged. Like they know who you are.
How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I thought, because I saw that aerial view of what they left, because it was just mud. And
it was mud.
There was like vehicles out there that they're not going to be able to come back and get.
Right.
You know?
Well, they do.
So what's going to happen next year?
They come back and they get them.
But they actually do get them.
Everything goes away.
Right on.
Nothing's out
there. So it's nice and clean when you show up there the next year.
So I've been going out since 2012 nonstop, including the 2 off years for COVID.
Yeah.
And then I started going to this thing called the 4th of July, which is a free thing that we go to, and we set up stuff. And this is I think 5 years I've been going out there.
What is that?
So that's just like a little Burning Man out there with sound camps and bars. No, it's 2 hours north of Reno in the Black Rock Desert.
Okay.
So when you go driving, you're going through Native American reservations and
no kidding.
Pyramid Lake, and it's absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. So you get out there. When you go to Burning Man, you drive in. You're going 5 miles an hour. You park, and you're in this 80,000 person village. It's huge.
Wow.
When you go out there the other times, there's hardly anybody there. You drive 100 miles an hour if you want. You see the jagged ridges and the flatness and the beauty and the energy of that place.
Yeah.
And it's just spectacular. So last July when I went out, I brought my son, and he's been to Burning Man 4 times. He's 9. And we were out there, and I was thinking to myself, we watched one of those super moons come up, just spectacular, right? And so we're looking at it, and I thought, you know what Burning Man needs? It needs for the people to understand what Mother Nature is, like how amazing this is. So Mother Nature was like, I got your back on this one, and she just rained on us. And what it ended up doing was keeping people in their neighborhoods, and they discovered their little neighborhood place instead of looking for the next big adventure, even within that realm.
Right.
And so the people who freaked out were the people who haven't been there before and needed to be at work on Tuesday. The people who were veterans, they're like, I wasn't planning on being at work on Tuesday anyway.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat to hear that it has kind of a purpose.
Oh, there's a purpose.
Is there like, tell me what's going on out there? Is it like a music festival?
Oh, well, so it's everything. Probably the biggest art festival in the world.
Art festival.
When you think of something, when you think of something crazy and then you see it. Okay, so my favorite thing out there is called El Pulpo Mecánico.
Okay.
So it is made out of junk. It's trash. It's like pieces of metal. It's like old trash barrels. And it is a giant octopus.
They just welded it all together.
And it's got 8 arms, and on each arm is a fire ring, and then the head has 2 eyes on each side of the head.
I see.
And they come in and out, and the arms go up and down, and when it blows fire, you can feel the heat on your body. Like
there's a fire going on each eight of the things,
and it's going across the desert.
Out. It's moving too.
Yeah, it's moving. And these guys are from Santa Cruz, and there's just 8 guys who did this thing, and they get together and they do it. There's another one that's just like similar, and they have a fire off, like they'll be at a place. One night we were there with my son. He found a lightsaber.
Okay.
So here he is, like 4.
Yeah.
He's got a full fireman's jacket on, and he's wearing like lights and a helmet, and he's got a push bike. So he's coming, and this woman goes, "Oh, he's got to do this." So there was like an arched cathedral. I don't know. I can't even explain it. But it was like it went up about 50, 60 feet, and it has arches. It looked like an Italian Renaissance building.
Okay.
But it was metal and had flowers on it, and when you push the button, the flame off the top was probably about 35, 40 feet.
Wow.
And there's my son pushing the button. He goes, "Daddy, am I going to see big fire?" I go, "You're not going to see big fire. You're going to make big fire."
All right.
So yeah, he's a veteran.
Nice.
So like we brought him a couple years ago. They had a whole trampoline park.
Oh,
right?
no kidding.
Right on the playa.
Yeah.
And so we're talking big, like giant, four huge rectangles, and he's bouncing on it all day. And
Yeah.
so for kids, people are like, "Oh, kids, and there's nudity and there's drugs and blah blah blah." I was like, yeah, there's some of that stuff, but for the most part, not during the day and not when kids are around. And they had a 747 out there one year. Like they bought this old 747. They had to take down phone lines to bring it out. It was a huge thing.
Yeah.
So they picked up all the kids from kids camp. There's a kids camp, and they brought him. And here he is sitting in the cockpit of this 747 out in the middle of the desert. So you can imagine what must be going through a little kid's head.
Oh yeah.
When he's seen that.
Right.
So I'm thinking my big thing is I've been teaching for 21 years. And my next gig, I think I was telling you about this, is to pull them out of school and just take a trip.
Yeah.
And maybe for a year. So I think the first stop is going to be Chile.
Wow.
And I had a friend who passed away about this time last year, and she had this vision of herself as a hummingbird. And she wrote this beautiful poem, which was played by a professional musician who came down. Anyway, after she passed, I kept seeing hummingbirds everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere, yeah. My mother-in-law would come over and she would have a crocheted hummingbird. And I went to a friend's house and he had one up on the wall. And they would sing "Bye Bye Miss American Pie" down in Chile, right? When it was the end of the day. They didn't know what it meant, but they would sing that song. So somebody just posted a picture of her the other day, Maestra Rosana. And she was a crazy woman. She was a lawyer too.
Yeah.
And I said, "Wow, I really would like to see where she lives." And her sister wrote, "Come to our house. We're going to greet you with open arms." So I thought, there's the universe, right? The universe has been like tapping on my shoulder the whole time saying, "Hey, move on to the next thing." And so the idea of being aware of what's going on around you is what I try to teach the kids, perspective, awareness. And I mean, I teach middle school English. So you think, oh, you're just teaching them how to look at literature and those things. But it's so much more than that, at least for me.
Take me back to the school that you had gone to. Now, you said that was a kind of integration between math and science and a bunch of other different things.
Right.
Like, what did you mean by that? Is
that
integrated, like?
For instance, so Steiner had this whole thing with the
Steiner, right?
with this whole Rudolf Steiner with this breathing thing, right? So So when you come inside and it's winter, say, it's cold and you're thinking. That's when your brain wakes up. In the summer, your brain goes to sleep. Your body wakes up. So he has this whole thing about breathing. He says, all you have to teach children is how to breathe and how to sleep. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, right. That's what I'm asking.
So the sleep part is when we go to sleep, we kind of leave our bodies and connect with the spiritual world. Okay. And that's why we sleep on something, right? Right. Why don't you sleep on that? And you have a better idea.
Yeah, right.
And then you come back. And the breathing thing is like being outer and being inner. So we would teach something like the main lesson in the morning, right? First there's movement, because movement is life. Okay. And then, and movement changes from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, and some high schools, they have high schools for it. Sure. And then I'd have a 2-hour lesson. And the 2-hour lesson would consist of 3 to 4 week block of whatever that one thing we were learning. So like, I
love it.
And then each year is a different sort of theme. And then after the main lesson, you have either painting or sculpting or singing, and it's all incorporated in there.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's pretty fabulous. So I got to learn from a great Italian sculptor who taught us in Santa Cruz how to do sculpting, and then another person taught us how to do speech. Another person was teaching us painting, and she had a southern drawl, and we would be painting 2 paintings at once. So called veil painting. So you'd have one up going and the other one would be drying, and then you move them back and forth. So it was like being in a Renaissance school.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I was 40 years old, and I'm like, I was a journalist, sports writer for 12 years,
Yeah.
and that ended, and I went into the internet world, and then that ended, and then I was a manny for a while, like watching this woman's kid, and my daughter was going to Waldorf school. So we brought her there because she had some learning issues. And then 9/11 happened. And then we had shock and awe.
Sure.
And I was like, I can't change these old white guys.
No.
But I could help young people realize who they are, what their power is, how they're responsible for their own actions and their own lives. And that's how I got into the teaching gig.
I think that's just any type of alternative. We're all about the same age. You know, I'm going to be 58 this year. You guys are about the same age, the early 60s. So we grew up sitting in a chair for 7 hours a day, staring at one teacher or another, trying to absorb all this.
Right.
And I often thought, and many people have, if you could incorporate it with some movement.
Oh, yeah.
Start it with some movement. Of course, we had gym class, but some had it first hour, some had it 7th hour. It's just kind of wherever you landed on the board, and this really intrigues me to listen to people talk about different ways of learning.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had, I always forget the name, where they read things backwards. Dyslexia. Or they forget things. Oh, that's me. No. But stuff like that, people need to learn in different ways.
Right. What's fabulous, like when you learn about dyslexia, that they're not reading anything backwards, they're not flipping the letters, they're seeing them in 3D all the way around it. That's why the people with dyslexia can see things in a way that the rest of us who don't have that see things.
Right.
My son's brother, who I taught for 6 years, long story.
Your son's brother.
My son's brother.
That would be your other son.
He's not my son.
Okay.
So he has synesthesia.
I've never heard of that.
So synesthesia is when you hear in colors.
Huh.
So when he hears a note, he'll hear blue or red,
feeling blue,
and see it. And he couldn't stand singing because for him it was abrasive.
Right.
And that's another thing with autistic kids; they have some of these issues. And I spent a whole year reading one book with them in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Oh, the Places You'll Go. The Dr. Seuss book.
Sure.
And I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts, which is where Dr. Seuss is from. He wrote a book for his 8th grade project. This is a kid who couldn't read in 3rd grade.
Oh,
and he wrote,
the child you were teaching actually wrote his own book.
And when he got to 8th grade, he wrote his own book.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He's got it in him.
Oh,
just got to teach him different. Or approach it different. Or make him feel good about himself.
If you asked him a question, he'd go, well, and then some kid would want to jump in. And I go, hold on.
Right.
And then he'd come out with a brilliant way of thinking on stuff, right? So I had him. I had this kid, Miles. And Miles left our school, went to Chartwell, he comes back. He skips a grade to come up to my class. This kid can't sit still. I got a CSA box every week. So I'm like, hey, Miles, cooked asparagus in the back of the room while I'm doing the science project. He's cooking away, and then we're all eating asparagus. And, it's like you have to find your way to help kids integrate in the way that they feel comfortable and understand.
Right.
Now, you can't do that with everybody.
No.
But you can see everybody for who they are. And
sure.
I have this gift, and the gift came from my mom. So I'll tell you a little bit.
Tell me.
So my housemate, I had a spate of 14 people dying in 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like crazy, right? So my housemate passes away, and I got a storage, and I reach in. You know how you go through stuff, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't go into this box. So I pull out a journal, and I open it. And it's 20 years almost to the day, right? And it says, Mom just had a stroke. I wonder if Dad is scared. I wonder if my brothers and sisters know that Mom love me most. And then what I realized from that was that my mom always made whoever she was talking to feel like that you were the most important person.
Right.
So
Boy, that's a gift.
That's a gift,
Yes,
right?
for sure.
So she gave me that gift. And my kids are always like, hey, am I your favorite? And I go, of course you're my favorite. And then he'll ask, hey, am I your favorite? And I go, yeah, you're my favorite. And I'll go,
winky, wink.
winky, wink, right? And they don't actually care that I said it to the other one.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter.
Right, right.
And I had an aunt who they had no kids. They were my mom's aunts. And we would go over to their house and she'd go, would you like a drink? I'm like, yeah. So she'd go under the thing and she'd get a Coke, right? And she'd the top, and then she had the little tongs in the with the ice. And she'd put it in the glass,
Sure.
she'd pour it, she'd hit it to you. And I realized my aunt was one of the first people who treated me like a person.
Really, yeah.
Where my mom, when my mom would cook, she'd go, hey, Pete, what do you think should be in this? You think it needs a little salt, a little sugar? So I'd say something and she would do it. And I was like, wow.
She really was asking my opinion.
She really was asking my opinion.
Right.
And so that thing is something I'm able to do, and you get it back. Like you get it back in spades.
Right.
You get it back in
That's
spades.
really neat.
Oh, yeah. I had a new girl come in this year. And so it was kindness week. And I don't know if she did it for that, but I got this little paper box. It was like the size of a chiclet box, like 3
Sure,
inches
right.
by 2.
Yeah.
And on it said, Mr. Mentor 8B Fruit Loops, right? And it was a little cereal box, and it said seriously with a C. And then on the back, it had the, what do they have on the side of the boxes? The recommendations, daily recommendations.
Yeah.
It said patience 800%, kindness like 700%, caffeine 1,000%. And then the inside were these hand-drawn candies. And each one said, thank you for your patience, or yo, or you're strange, but in a good way. And I was sitting there like, that was one of the best things I've ever received.
That's really neat.
The whole time I've been teaching.
Yeah. So thoughtful, and so it took her a lot of time to do.
And people are like, oh, these kids, blah, blah, blah. And they're not like this. And like, I go, do you work with children?
Yeah.
Because if you did,
Right.
if you actually took the time to listen to them, and I mean, some of it's really difficult.
Yeah.
Right. I had a girl who was suicidal. And her dad held a gun to the mom's head, and he went to jail.
Right.
And I saw her the other day at the Target, and she was, hey, Mr. Mentor, blah blah blah, right? And I'm like, she's having a really hard time. Sometimes you just have to give them a hug, and
Right.
as a teacher and a girl, you can give a side hug.
Yeah.
You can't get the straight on hug.
Right.
With the boys, you can give the straight on hug.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a little game you play, but
Yeah.
you have to find the care and concern for each of those kids. And one of the things about the Waldorf school, you take kids in first grade, and for their birthday, you find out what day were they born, like what day of the week,
Oh, I see.
what month, what day, something that was noble about them from their parent, something that was funny about them.
You're writing this, or they're writing?
The parent says this to you, and then what was the weather like that day? Or what time are you born? Oh, it was raining, and then the sun came out, blah, 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 right? Then you have to write a birthday verse for them that they have to recite on their day of the week each week.
A birth favor?
A birthday verse.
Birthday verse.
So
Oh,
it's
I
like,
see.
and what it is where they are to where you want them to go. So usually the little kids, it's about nights, and they're off on this adventure, and there's a storm, but then the sun comes out, and they're like, and the mom's like, oh, that's the story of their birth. You're like, exactly. Because I'm thinking about them all the way from when they were born to where they are.
Yeah.
And then all the way to where they want to go. Steiner says, we're teaching people to be good 40-year-olds, right? It's not a short-range thing.
Sure.
It's how do you make people aware of how they learn, what's valuable to them, what they have to give, how you can give by receiving well, like
Right.
taking a compliment
You
well.
know, that's very interesting you say that. It's like they have to learn for themselves how they learn.
Exactly.
Because you know as a child, I just learn differently than other people, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that.
Yeah, well, you can still do that.
Well,
Well, no, that's the beauty of it, right? It's like even as you get older, especially as you get older, I think, like you can learn more ways of how you learn. Like, are you a visual? Are you an auditory?
Yeah.
do you need both? Do you need nothing? Like some people, you just give them the directions and they're off, right? Off to the races. Other people, you actually literally have to put your hand on their shoulder because they're floating. They're not grounded. It's like an ungrounded appliance.
Yeah.
You just ground them literally by touching their shoulder. You go, hey, what are we doing? And they're like, and then you make the connection.
Right.
So some of them need it, and then you can color code things. Right. I used to color code nouns were blue and adjectives were yellow and verbs were like orange or something like. So I had this color coding so that some of the kids who learn in that way can see how words are working. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, very
like to think about like how you go about doing that.
Yeah, right. It almost brings a mood in with it.
Oh, that's a really good point. Like the mood and the tone are two different things, right?
Right.
So the tone, like your tone of voice, or your tone of voice, right, changes the mood.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes
as a color would.
As a color would.
As you visualize a color, whether it be yellow, you can almost feel yellow.
Oh,
you can feel blue. Not like I feel
you're
blue,
teaching
but
first grade, there's a wet on wet painting technique. So you just do blue one day,
okay,
and they just do blue, and then there's a different blue. Like there's like the Prussian blue, there's a different blue. And the blue always smells eggy because there's egg in that one blue thing. But then you might be doing yellow, right? So you're doing yellow one day and they're just doing yellow. Like just yellow? Like, yeah. And then one day you do blue and it comes all the way down to yellow and there's this little strip in the middle and then they touch each other.
Right.
And it's like
green.
the sun just touching off on that ocean. Like, and then like it's life, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the thing that you're doing music, you're doing painting, you're doing. We sang at third grade. We learned rounds. Sometimes they do it in fourth grade. So we sang the alphabet song.
Okay.
Like not A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P.
Yeah.
Right. We did Mozart. So my voice is a little off, but it was like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. And then it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then the three rounds meet. And these kids are singing Mozart and the alphabet, and the parents are dumbfounded.
Right.
And then the kids were reciting these 25-line poems. Because they can,
wow.
But we don't do it because we don't think they can.
Because you don't think they can.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want to make them feel bad. So we'll better just not let them try.
Right. And I think
maybe I'm wrong there.
You know Björk, the singer from Iceland.
Oh, it sounds really familiar.
So
I think so. Yeah.
Björk is this crazy woman singer from Iceland. I just went to Iceland last June with my daughter. I went for 2 weeks, and I didn't really listen to Björk, but
was she in a band?
She's in a band. I mean, she's super famous, right?
Yeah.
But
big tall girl, right?
She's Icelandic. But
right.
Here's the thing: in Iceland, everybody does poetry and everybody sings and everybody's expected to fail at everything. Even living, like if you fall in Iceland and nobody sees you, you might die because it's really dark and cold, right? So when they have a built-in failure and everybody knows it's okay to fail, then they try stuff. So everybody tries stuff. And occasionally somebody breaks through with this amazing art or singing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Here we have such a fear of failure that the kids are so stressed about failing, right? And I'm like, it came up today. We do this thing called Night of the Notables in 7th grade, where I teach now at this international school. And in the beginning of the year, they do a research project on themselves. Where are you from? Who are your parents? What do you like? What's your bedroom like? What's art? All the kind of things. Then they learn how to do monologues. And then they learn about heroism through Joseph Campbell and his hero clock and this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Then they have to pick a notable person and do a research project, write a monologue, do the same thing they've already done, but about this other person. And one of the things I bring into is, what's the thing that stood in that person's way that seemed like maybe a tragedy that turns out to really be the gem, the thing that helps them into the thing that they're going to be. So Kobe Bryant, for instance, he was 11 years old. He goes to this prestigious summer basketball camp, not like paid money big, but like Wilt Chamberlain, all these people were there. Yeah. So he goes, I played the whole summer. I didn't score 1 point. Not a free throw, not a free throw, not a point.
Really?
And I was like, and he was talking about how his mom's always there for him, but what his dad said to him was the most important thing. He said, look, you could score 60 points, you could score no points. I'm always going to love you.
Yeah.
And so he said, from then on, he didn't have to worry about failure because failure was okay, but I still wanted to score 60 points.
Right.
So he goes, so I focused on just shooting for 6 months, and then I focused on opening up my shot and creating a shot, and then I focused on taking the open shots and making the open shots. And the next summer, I did succeed. And then, obviously he learned this crazy work ethic, which was, 3 practices a day on his own, 4 o'clock in the morning he starts, it's nuts, but fanatical. But to the point where he was fabulous, right? And this woman, and this kid's, one of the kids is doing Kobe, so I've been looking up Kobe. This woman interviewed him. She says, there's 2 kinds of people in the world. People who are afraid of failure, so they do well, and people who are just seek to win. Which one are you? He said, I'm neither one.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I'm
you could be either one, yeah.
I do it for the experience of doing it,
Yeah.
of getting better, of being who I am. And I thought that was so fabulous.
Yeah.
So when these kids choose these notable people, sometimes they choose Tupac, or they'll choose somebody like, and some of the administrators are like, is this a notable person? I'm like, look, it's not Hitler, right? Because he's notable, but not for the right reasons, right? So what I'm asking them to do is, and this is an interesting thing, find what it was, what were they like when they were your age, 10, 11, 12, 13? What did they have to overcome, and how did they become what they became? Really what I'm doing is teaching them to be their own hero.
Right.
To see what they have to overcome.
Start at that age where you're at now.
Yeah.
Find what you have in common with whatever he was doing there. Right.
And when they choose somebody, there's somewhat of an autobiographical thing of children choosing a specific person because they have some kind of relationship. Like somebody's doing Mike Tyson. It's like, well, Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson was amazing. Mike Tyson at 12 years old was 190 pounds.
Right.
He was this kid in a man's body.
Right.
And this white guy, I can't remember the name, became his mentor for, 7 or 8 years.
Sure.
And the guy who was his mentor was like, I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for Mike Tyson because I would have no reason to live. And he's like, they had a symbiotic relationship, the 2 of them together.
Yeah.
And you can listen to Tyson now. He does his own podcast.
Sure.
And he talks about how the money and the fame and all that stuff is just nothing. That's like nothing. Like what's important is what we have, like this ability to be interconnected with each other and to be supportive. And like, I think about this all the time. What we have the ability as humans to put out there in the world. So I'm at Burning Man last year. It always starts. My stories are always like, I was at Burning Man this one time, or there was this woman, right? But I'm at Burning Man this year. So I've been going for 12 years. So every year there's a phone booth.
12 years?
Yeah, 12 years.
Wow.
And there's a phone booth that says, talk to God. So I have never stopped at that
Direct line.
Direct line. Right? So I'm riding my bike and I'm like, I'm going to go talk to God. And there was somebody talking, So finally they hang up. And I'm like, finally. So I pick up the phone and she goes, who am I talking to? And I'm like, God's a woman. Great. I go, and since it's God, I go, oh, this is your son. And I got a lot of questions. I go, how
He's a
come?
comedian too, eh?
I go, so there's me. And I go, how come we have all this incredible, amazing art and lights and it's fabulous. I mean, just the music, everything. And we have all this pestilence and war and all this other stuff. I'm like, I'm all for juxtaposition, right? Dark and light, because I'm a photographer, hot and cold, soft and strong. But we could have okay and fabulous. We don't have to have really, really crappy.
Oh, right. It's deep.
But we do have to have some of that other part.
Yeah.
And it's like there's pain. There's pain in life, as you know, because you were digging in on me on Saturday, right? And I was in absolute pain, and when I came in and I walked out, and I felt like I could walk, right? And that
sounds like a Yelp review.
It's a great Yelp review, and after, but at the end of the pain, you did the hot soak on my foot in the massage, and I said that's the dessert, and I actually did need that.
Yeah.
Because it was painful, and I've been through a lot of pain in my life,
Sure.
Bodily pain. But what I thought too was like, what am I coming in to talk about? And it was like self-care. So self-care can be like what this woman did, this 26-year-old student I had, who took herself out of the realm of dating and all that stuff to be by herself and feel the awkwardness of her life. And then discover the amazingness of herself and being with herself. And it could be that. It might be me ending a 21-year teaching career and taking my son down to Chile and experiencing what it's like to be in a different society and lifestyle. That's not Burning Man strange. It's just different strange. It's just a different thing.
Yeah.
So self-care to me is realizing what's missing or what you may need to be feeling whole and going and doing that. And of course, like the Grateful Dead said, that the whole thing, like being on the road's great, but there's a point when I need to come home, and then being home is great, but there's a point where I need to go back on the road.
Right? I bet. Yeah.
So,
no.
And I've always been a wanderer, so.
Right. You said something interesting about loss or pain. I was talking with this gentleman the other day, and he was talking about fear of failure and fear of that. Interesting conversation I had with him. He was in the Air Force 25 years. He's very serious.
Sure.
And he got out trying to figure out what's next for me. And one of the things that he did, he joined an improv. And basically just to goof off and play.
Sure. Yeah.
And just to make an idiot out of yourself.
Absolutely.
And learn how to not care. And I thought, wow, that is really interesting. He's got to learn how to fail. Or learn how to not get something right. Learn how to stand there and have the whole crew laughing at you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, what, and laugh along with yourself. You just have to learn how to do that. It just makes life so much better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so a couple of years ago, I'm out at Burning Man. I'm working on a huge project. It's a fabulous project. This woman, African-American woman from Oakland, she's got full body sculptures. We're building this, what's it called? The thing in the park. Comes up like this. It's like not a pergola, but it's like, I can't remember. Anyway, it's got
something the kids play on.
It's got a spiral staircase. No, it's the thing you see. I'm spacing on it. She's got artwork all around it. It's crazy. My friend is working on it. It's getting dark, and I'm on a one wheel, which is a big skateboard with a giant wheel.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm riding, waiting for him, and I'm going through this powder because it's dusty out there.
Right.
And it felt like powder skiing. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, right.
And then I start going
thinking.
fast, and then when they die, this is it, by the way, the one wheel. When they die, they ditch. So I go down, bam.
Just nosedive into the ground.
15 miles an hour nosedive. So I shatter my collarbone.
no.
I'm on the ground. I'm dying. I've broken my back. I got hit by a roller coaster, both my legs. I've been messed up, right? This hurt more than anything. So somebody came by and they gave me this multicolored thing to put on, and I'm sitting there and the ambulance comes because they have a whole full rampart and everything.
Sure, yeah.
So they get out, and there's a guy, and he comes over and he goes, so I have to ask you a question. Have you ever had any medical or recreational ketamine? And I said, yes, I have.
Right.
And he said, I'm going to give this to you because I can't give you drugs, but I can give you this to get you off the playa.
Okay.
And the woman working with him looks at him and she goes, you're going to do that here? And he's like, yeah. And she goes, well, look at you. And I started to laugh. So they hit me up. The hat I'm wearing at the time says safety third. It's a saying at Burning Man. And they bring me in, and there's this beautiful young doctor, and he's standing there, and I go, look, if you don't make fun of me, I'll be really disappointed. So even at that point, you realize, like, okay, I'm pretty messed up.
Right.
I'm pretty messed up. And I was out there for 9 days with a shattered collarbone, riding on a bike. I meet a guy who has a little extender on his handlebar. He comes back 2 hours later, gives it to me. So now I'm riding around holding the bones in, right? It takes me 19 hours to get home with my son. Crazy. I taught for a week. And on Friday, I saw the surgeon. He goes, I'll see you on Monday for surgery.
Really?
So I missed 4 days of school and then back to school by Friday.
Wow.
And I've I've had these things happen to me, and like I got hit when I was 20 by this roller coaster. I was working, broke both my legs, and didn't walk for over a year.
How in the hell do you get hit by a roller coaster? I've been on many roller coasters.
You have.
Never have been hit by one.
This was a 4-person car roller coaster. You know, like they have one up at Santa Cruz.
Oh, I see.
And we were working, and there was a brake on the bottom that looked like a fin, and then the brakes would stop on it, and it would happen occasionally. So I had to climb up, I don't know, 50 feet, and they had a pry bar, and you had to pry it open, then you came down. And then a little teeny ladder at the bottom, which nobody used, because you stepped on the track to jump to the platform, because I was the operator of the brakes, which were manual, right? So I had to be there.
Yeah.
So I'm coming down, I step across, the car wasn't supposed to be coming, it comes down, it's going about 48 miles an hour, I found that out the other day, and comes up about 5-6 feet to where I am on the platform, and I jump.
Oh, I see. Just chip shotted you.
Chip shotted me. Yeah,
man.
yeah. Actually, I like that. We're gonna use a sandwich on this one, and I land on the ground, and I'm like, I'm not hurting, and then the wave of pain came,
I was gonna
and then
say.
it left, and then it came and left. It
Really?
took about 45 minutes to extricate me from this ride, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm coming from this place called Agawam, which is named for the Native Americans there, and I'm coming back, and in New England they have expansion joints on the highway for freezing.
Sure.
And they're bumps. And I don't know if you've ever been in the back of an ambulance, but they're trucks. It's like you're in the back of a truck, right?
Dualies, right?
So we're going, and I can tell you there are 29 of those expansion joints from Riverside Park to the hospital. And they go, what hospital do you want to go to? And I go,
the closest
do you want to go to
one.
Wesson? Do you want to go to this Bay State? Or do you want to go to Mercy? I go, Mercy. Mercy. And I had no idea that was the Catholic hospital.
Okay.
So I'm in the hospital, and the Monsignor came to visit me when I was there, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of honored, you know. And when I first got out of, it wasn't even surgery; they just put the cast on, and I woke up. They were giving me the painkillers, and I have a pretty high threshold for pain, but I'm like, this ain't working.
Really?
This is not working.
You feel right through it.
So finally, I looked down, and my toes were turning black because my leg was swelling.
Oh yeah.
And the nurse wasn't listening to me, and I'm like, this is not working. So they cut the cast off. I got 50 different casts over the year plus that I was in this thing.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
So bust your hips or where?
I broke my tib fib on the left and tib on the right. Had a machine I had to wear for 12 hours a day. I'm freshman year of college. It's like, like what the?
What's the machine doing?
So the machine's sending electrical impulses to my leg, because what happened is one of the bones healed and the other one was just getting cartilage. So twice I left the doctor's office. Yep, you're all good. And then I go home, take a hot bath, and my leg goes boo, like right in the middle.
Really?
Right in the middle of my shin.
Because it was
still broken.
Yeah.
So the guy was going to take a piece of my hip, and I was in college, and one of my friends' dad was a doctor, and he goes, hey, there's a doctor in Boston, Dr. Drew, at Brigham and Women's Hospital. So we went, and he's the guy who takes those cases after nobody can fix them.
I see, right.
And he goes, you just need a long cast, you need to reposition this thing, and within about 5 months, I could walk again. Now, I wasn't running, but I could play golf with a cart, I did that. And then that was in 91, and in 81. In 88, I ran the Boston Marathon.
After the break?
Yeah, so it took 7 years. I was fine, but when I ran Boston, I knew that I was good.
Yeah.
And then I ran it again in 90, but with my fiance, and I gave her the ring at the end, and that was kind of cool.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So we moved out here in I guess in 90.
Yeah.
For 1 year.
Right.
And we're still here.
How long is the Boston Marathon? That's a big one, isn't
26.2.
26 miles?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I was a sports writer for 12 years, and I love sports. I'm from Massachusetts. Can't help it.
Boston.
Yeah, in Boston. So I don't have that accent because I'm from Western Mass. I'm not from Eastern Mass, right? But so we're out there, and it's lined from beginning to end with people.
That's what blows me away when I see that
crazy.
thing. It's just so many people.
The whole state has the day off because it's Patriots Day.
Okay.
Right? So people go to the Red Sox game in the morning, and then you're running, and you get through Wellesley, and it's a gauntlet of women, and you don't care how tired you are. You're like,
right.
And I was a studly little guy back then, ran it with my best friend. So, and I was a big runner, and And that was a huge part of my life.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge.
And now I can't walk very well.
I can't walk very well.
So I'm getting a new knee in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and then we'll get after that from there.
We'll get
we'll
after
get you
that.
back on the road. That shouldn't be a problem.
And then after that, I'm on my trip around the world to figure it out.
So back up before we go into the trip around the world. How did you get to be a sports writer? Were you just a huge fan as a child, or
I grew up watching sports.
Sure,
I played sports.
Massachusetts.
I played everything.
Yeah, yeah.
I played. There's not a sport I really didn't play. You know.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I was on the ski team. I played soccer. I played lacrosse. I played football. I played basketball. And we just did everything because that's what we had. We BMX bikes, the whole thing. Then I stayed in high school next year to be with a girlfriend. She moved away, which was kind of a dumb idea. But
they do that.
I made my own photography courses then. I had this amazing teacher. And then I went to Minnesota with my best friend, got a job there, came to Santa Cruz. So I'm out here, and then I go back. I was like, I kind of chickened out, and then I get hit by the roller coaster. So I'm like, I suppose I should go to a college. So I didn't know UMass was actually a good school. I didn't know anything. I was dumb.
Yeah.
So I applied for communications because I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's full. So I'm like, well, what can I do that's something similar? So I went into journalism. I went into journalism.
Oh, I see.
So I was a political reporter, and I loved politics since the time I was a kid. I read Doonesbury. I used to draw.
Yeah, right.
In third, fourth grade. I'm an artist. I'm a photographer. I did all this stuff.
Sure.
So I thought I was going to go into that.
Yeah.
And me and this woman were applying for that same job at a small newspaper. Mm-hmm. And that week, the sports guy got pushed from the weekly paper up to the daily. Mm. So the guy goes, "Do you know anything about sports?" I'm like,
"Yes, I do."
So you go out and do this Criterion, which is just a race around the block. So I wrote my story, got the job, and literally my first job out of college. Besides working in restaurants for 10 years, was working for a weekly, which is basically being retired.
Really?
Right? Yeah, you cover games all week. You have one deadline, right? And I shot some photos too. And then I would sit up all night just writing.
So most of your job was just watching ball games.
Yeah, and with
that's
everything.
Rough, man.
Yeah, and it was a tough thing, but I learned quickly to get out of the baseball ones because man, you got to watch every little bit of baseball. I liked the running ones, the cross country, the track.
I see.
I went to the state track meet one time. I watched Marion Jones. I don't know if you know who she is. Mm-hmm. She got nailed doing steroids in the Olympics at one point. But
okay.
I'm standing on the track because I have a camera. I watched this woman start to run. She's the fastest woman in the world at one point. Like we're talking, and this is in high school. She was a good 20 meters ahead after the corner on a 200. And I'm just looking at her like that. And she's just smooth.
Really? Just floating.
Oh, when you watch that. So to me, what I loved about it was the beauty of the body moving. Like the art of movement.
Right.
And so that kind of got me interested into that. And, and I was a cyclist and a runner, and I just loved all that stuff. So I loved being a journalist, but man, newspapers were taking a tank, and they were putting more money into the capital than they were for the humans.
I was wondering how you got out of that. Seems like a pretty cool job.
I got out of it, and I went over to the city, and I worked for 18 months at this place. It was a financial news thing. I had to be there at 5 a.m. in San Francisco. So get up at 3:50, drive across the bridge, 17 minutes, downtown, go to the James Bong building, go upstairs, read a few scripts, have my coffee, go upstairs, go to the bathroom. Right. They had a bathroom in this place. I have to tell you a stupid story, but they had a bathroom in this place, a one-holer, with a giant window, like 6 feet by 7 feet. And I'd sit there and watch the sun come up. And I'd be like, and I got there at 5 a.m., working at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And the building was called the James Bong building.
I thought you made that up.
No, it was like, my name is Bong.
James Bong.
James Bong. That was actually a fabulous job. And then, I'd get out at 2. And then I'd go and coach soccer over in the East Bay. I coached high school girls and
oh, perfect.
Yeah, and I had a little kid.
You probably had to be to bed by 9 or
we
8.
Went to bed by 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I had a little daughter at the time, so
the ass crack of dawn at 3 o'clock. Woo!
Dude, but I had a paper route growing up, so I got up at 5:30.
Yeah,
doing the snow, New England, that whole thing.
Sure, right.
So I like to write, and I like I shoot photos almost every single day. That's probably my next gig is going into photography.
And what do you write? Poetry or you?
Oh, I like poetry. I write right now. I've been writing about relationship and relationship with yourself, relationship with others. After I unceremoniously left one of my jobs, two of the parents in who I had for 6 years, right? They knew me well.
Yeah.
Brought me to this breakthrough men's community, which is here. That was started.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I did that twice because I was gifted it the first time, and the second time they asked me to help out. That really taught me all the tools that I needed to release connections with things that weren't working for me in my life and past hurts. And they give you all these tools. And, it's like any tool, right? You got your toolbox.
Yeah.
You get to the job. You're like, oh, I need a, 6/8 inch.
Right.
Need that wrench or that thing. So that's really helped me become a better dad, a better partner, and a way better teacher. To understand some of those things that, like, these emotions and things we have are like clouds over the sun. Sun's going to come back out. Just allow that part to happen, and don't react, because all the holes I dug for myself overreacting, it's just crazy. So the learning thing is a constant thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Sometimes when I overreact on things and after I'm all done, or I'm worrying about something too much, and then it finally gets done, it's like, why did I worry so much? But if I didn't have worried, I wouldn't have made it as good as I did. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like I did worry too much about it. But at the same time, if I wouldn't have, it never would have pushed me to finish it when I did and as well as I did. So there's a good balance there.
There's a balance, and you can also find that you might not have to do that to do as well, right? To bring love into the thing you're doing and like really look at it as a Zen thing. Like every little thing you can do, you can actually have an amazing experience out of it.
Right.
And then the worry part, there's a book called Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung by Ajahn Brahm. And this guy was he grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in London.
Sure.
And he becomes a physicist and a teacher.
Wow.
And then he gives it up to become a Buddhist monk in like the 70s in like Cambodia. Like, he's going to this place, right? And it's a crazy thing. And he's got all these stories in the book about building a monastery and about some of the stuff that he goes through. And like one of the ones is he's got to build a wall. And he's got to do it. He got the bricks, the mortar, the whole thing. And he's putting this wall up.
Right.
Right. And he's like, it's easy, right? You put it in some mortar, you stick it down, you tap a side, the other side comes up, you tap it, and you work on it. And he goes, so he's building this wall, and it goes up, and then he looks, and these two bad bricks. And he's like, ah. So he goes into the head monk, right? There's three of these guys, and they're sleeping on doors, right? And his door has a hole in it, and he can feel the wind coming up through at night. And he goes, we have to take that wall down. We have to blow that wall up. He goes like, I'm sorry, but we only have this much time and this much resources to do that. He goes, just look at it. He goes, so he's like, so people would come to visit, and I would steer people away from it, steer people away. Finally, this one guy comes in
from when that
like they're building the monastery, and people would come,
Yeah.
and this one guy goes, wow, what a beautiful wall. And he goes, beautiful wall? Do you need glasses? Do you not see those two bad bricks? And the guy says to him, yeah, I see. Oh yeah, now that you mention, I do see those two bad bricks, but I see the 998 good bricks that went along with it.
Right.
And that's when he realized, wow, actually, we focus on the thing that goes wrong, and it overshadows all the stuff that goes right. And he goes, one guy came, and he was a contractor, and he goes, we make mistakes all the time when we're building stuff. And we call that a special feature, and we charge extra for it. So
Bob Ross and his happy accidents.
Right. So some of those things are like, there's another one in that same book where there's a monk, and he has to borrow these pliers because he's pulling his tooth out. And this guy's like, what? You're pulling your own tooth out? He's like, yeah, he pulls the tooth out. And he goes, well, here's the thing. My tooth is hurting, and that's pain. But if I think about going to the dentist, that's painful. And then as I ride to the dentist, that's painful. And then when I sit in this chair at the dentist, that's painful. And then he pulls it out, and then finally the pain goes away. I'm just avoiding the middleman. And I cleaned the pliers. And that's one of my favorite books. I taught that to my 7th and 8th grade at the Waldorf School.
Oh, how neat.
Just fabulous. Some of the stories are funny. Some of the stories are brutal.
But so much hidden meaning.
Oh, and they're short. They're like, sit on the John.
Right.
Length stories.
Where you can sit down with the class and say, what did you absorb from that?
What did you absorb from that? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, there's
Tell
one
them
in there.
What you absorbed from it. And they go, I didn't think about it that way. Okay, yeah.
The hardest one, which I saved for the end of 8th grade, was a woman. She comes to the monastery they have this pray thing, and she's there for an hour and a half.
Sure.
So she comes each week, and she's there. And one day she comes in with this little stool to kneel on. And she's been coming for like 7 years. And she says to the guy, he says, oh, you got that stool. Where'd you get that? She goes, oh, my husband made it. Oh, how nice. She goes, well, it is because when I first started coming here, my husband used to beat me. And I came here, and this was an hour and a half when I wasn't facing this monster of a man.
Right.
And I started listening to what you were saying because I was here. And one of the things you said was to water the flowers and don't water the weeds. So when my husband would do anything in the slightest bit nice, I would praise him. Putting a glass in the dishwasher. And when he did terrible things, I would ignore it.
Not water it, right.
And he said, you're a saint. I would have left. I would have told you to leave.
Right.
She said, and he made this out of wood he would have beat me with before. And he saw his own light in her praising him at the right time.
Right.
And he transformed.
Right.
And that moment, like when you're teaching kids this story, like it's a brutal story, right?
Yeah, right.
But they were, I knew when they were ready for it.
Yeah. Right.
I teach out of intuition.
Yeah.
If I had to write a lesson plan, don't tell my principal this, I would fail. I couldn't write a lesson plan to save my life.
Yeah.
I teach out of I know what I'm teaching. I have the idea.
I think you have a ballpark.
I have a ballpark. So I used to say, I don't even know what I'm doing today. And they got back to that principal, and she was like, rah, rah. And I'm like, what I meant is when I come in and I see the kids, I'm like, where are they today?
Right.
So in Waldorf, you shake the kids' hands on the way in to see how they're doing. And you shake them on the way out to see how you did. Right?
I see, yeah.
So if they're all white, you put too much abstract thought into their head. They need to be a little, have a little cheek color, right?
Yeah.
So, a kid might come in, shake you. Hey, what's going on?
Right.
My cat died.
Yeah. You can
You're
read it all over them.
Oh, your cat died. Or another kid comes in and goes, look, I brought in a bird's nest with eggs. That my lesson plan's gone. Let's talk about the bird's nest. That's way more interesting. And let's see where we can fit that into the thing that I was going to do that day.
I was going to say, you may find a way to educate them on what you were thinking about through that bird's nest.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And you may find, I've been teaching the same book for 8 years. Some kid found something in the book. We read this book called American Born Chinese. It's a graphic novel.
Sure.
This kid found this thing in it, and I go, I'm like, I've been looking at this book for 8 years, and you just taught me something new. Do you know how that feels to be a kid and have your teacher say that to you?
He'll remember that long after we're dead.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
He will carry that with him forever. And it may even build something in him to make him stronger. He'll always, look back at old Mr. Mentor that told me this one thing. I have that myself. I have teachers that have just mentioned something or said something. It's like, oh my God, I never even looked at it that way. And it was right in front of my face. You know.
And one of the things too, right now we're rereading The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, one of my favorite books, and great movie.
Nice, yeah, great movie.
So the summative for this is to take a scene and write it from a point of view of one of the other characters, because it's a first-person narrative from Pony Boy. She wrote this book in 60-something when I was a little kid. I remember reading it when I was 13 and going, whoa, this person's speaking the way I think. Like speaking from a kid's point of view. And they didn't have youth, young adult novels and any of that stuff back then. And some of it's graphic, and they banned it in some places because it's got some violence, blah, blah, blah. But what it's got in it is everybody feels like an outsider at some point in their life, even when you're in a clique, even when you're in a group. The whole book starts where he says, I know, when I walked out of the movie theater into the bright lights of the outside, all I could think of was Paul Newman and A Ride Home. because he wants to look like Paul Newman. And he talks about his hair and his eyes, his own hair and eyes, right? And I thought, so what's the author teaching you here? That looks were important for him because he associates with the greasers. But he also can't be with them to go see a movie because none of them would understand the way he sees it. So that perspective was really interesting. And he gets jumped and beat up. And I mean, the movie, the book is this fabulous book of self-discovery. And one of the kids in the book, Johnny Cade, got jumped and beat up by a guy with rings. And I always show the kids my rings.
Yeah.
And finally, when they're hiding out in this church, they're watching the sunrise. And he goes, wow, look at that. And he starts reciting this poem by Frost.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing gold can stay.
Sure.
And he goes, wow, yes, exactly what I was thinking. And Ponyboy looks at him like, he's actually really smart.
Yeah.
But he learns differently, teacher thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, he realizes something, like he was so fearful, Johnny was, that now he's not, because he's killed somebody and he's hiding out, but he has no fear now. So he can actually see the sunrise.
Right.
And it's really beautiful moment where he realizes he was just living in fear.
Sure.
So my big thing is, I think in my 70th year, from 60 to 70, is not working out of fear and working only out of love. It's like that simple. It's that simple.
Sounds simple.
It's that simple.
Sounds simple.
I know. And
that's
how
a feat, brother.
I've constantly, I'm in this relationship, kind of a relationship right now, and I'm pushing this person, and the thing I'm pushing is like, the person wants to be in control and wants to write what they're thinking. And that's a really good way of doing it, because then you're not interrupted and you're saying what you want to say, and the other person isn't, because we always interrupt, right? Especially from New England.
You're right.
And I said, and I know that it's uncomfortable to be in a regular conversation because you're not in control. I'm challenging you to go to that route as well, to see how you do, to see where that goes, because you don't know where that river's going to flow, right? Because that could change. And it was interesting because I said, just offhand said, the first story I ever wrote for my college newspaper was on anorexia and bulimia. Talked to a woman in California. I didn't know about this. I'm like 22 years old or whatever. She fell in love with the person that was helping her out of the situation. Right. And I thought, that's kind of where I am in a way. I'm kind of in that similar situation where it's like, I'm so clear on what I see in front of me after 5 years of being on my own, and some of the turmoil I had to go through, and breaking energies with this one other person I was with.
Right. Breaking energies. I like
breaking
that.
energies. And I can see I mean, and I'm a good writer, so I appreciate a good letter as well. But there's this other part, right? There's this energy that you have talking to a person face to face, and then allowing that space to happen. And part of the reason I can do that is because of breakthrough. And one of the things I learned was this thing called 7 and 7. And it'll be quick. 7 and 7 is, and I've been doing this with a friend of mine. You call, hey, can you do a 7 and 7? Yeah, okay. So you get 7 minutes to talk.
Okay.
And I'm not giving you any judgment. I'm not giving you any advice. I'm not giving you, except for right. Active listening. Yeah. And then I might offer an appreciation if you're willing. Like, oh, I like the way you stayed in those boundaries.
Right.
And then the other person gets to go. And you do this for 15 minutes, right? And then you're done. And then you do it every day if you can. You do as much. There's no expectation to do it. If you don't do it, you don't do it. What ends up happening is you learn how to listen. You learn how to, you have a sounding board for someone to, like, they're just there, and you're like, you hear yourself. And then you can hear that other person, and solutions start to come. Right. So there's this fabulous way of like helping yourself by helping others and learning how to listen. So I've done that I did that for 2 men for 2 years, and then they stopped doing it. I have a daughter in Florida. I have 22 children. I was a sperm donor. So I have a daughter.
Johnny Appleseed over here.
He lived in my hometown. And I'm an open donor, and this girl 8 years ago contacted me. And we talked through the second half of her senior year and the beginning of her college.
Really?
And then she and her mom flew out here on New Year's Day. And I saw her for 2 days. Went up to Santa Cruz, met my family. She goes, hey, you want to meet one of my brothers? because a group of them had gotten together and with my number and like 15 of them.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, right. And so I met one of my sons who ended up living half a mile from me up in Berkeley. Right? So this last, but then we've been talking, doing the 7-7s, and I don't have to do anything for her. I don't have to fix anything for her. So I've just been listening.
Right.
Like she'll say something like, "Hey, I think I want to see women." Oh, okay. And then like, I don't know, 2 weeks later, she goes, "I'm going on a date." I go, "What's her name?" She goes, "How do you know?" I go, "Well, because you said."
You told me.
I figured you were going to do that, right? So she just came out in October, and she graduated from FSU with a degree in a master's in art therapy.
I was going to ask you where they went.
Right,
Did they have some art in them?
Oh,
there
yeah.
You go.
Ton of art. And the other guy, Liam, he's a skater artist.
Yeah,
he's put out an album. Like, it's pretty cool.
Right.
So she came out, and because we've been talking forever, right?
Yeah.
So she comes out, and I had a week off. So the first day she came out, we went to How to Strictly Bluegrass, which is the free concert.
Sure, yeah.
The second week, we went to the How Weird Street Fair, which is another crazy thing up in San Francisco. Then we went to a Burning Man thing here on the beach.
She's like,
which we have every
this
year
is my
from
blood.
Empire. And Empire I've been doing since 2009. And then we went to the Burning Man decompression up in the city. So we did 4 major things in 3 weeks. Her boyfriend from Kazakhstan came out. It was just insanely fun. And she's like, "Oh my God, I don't even know how I can keep up with you." And I'm like, "I know."
That's how I want you to know me.
But I said to her, like, she's taught me so many things.
Yeah.
And about relationship, about opening stuff, like, polyamory and all the things that growing up in Florida.
In 70s?
As this woman, no, this is.
Oh, her, right.
Her, yeah.
Okay,
like,
right.
Florida is like Florida.
Sure.
So the fact that she came out of it unscathed, I don't know what, but she and her boyfriend just moved to North Carolina, and I'm really happy because I've been watching this woman progress from a high school senior through college. She got to her first week in college. She's like, "I don't know anybody here, and I don't think I'm going to do very well." And I'm like, "Mm-hmm."
That's what everybody's
I didn't say anything. I was like, "Uh-huh." And then after we said, "Oh, I met all these people," I'm like, "Yeah, you did."
Yeah, I know you did.
Yeah, you did. So it's been really interesting that I probably met about 9 of the 22.
Oh, have you
kids I
really?
have. Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. And my son knows, and he's like got 3 others. He's got my daughter that I raised in Santa Cruz, and then his 2 sisters and brother in Seaside. He goes, so he's got 21. He's got 24 siblings, and he'll tell kids that, and they're like, "No, that's
You were out there doning before the computers.
Yeah, this was in.
You probably had no idea that you would ever.
Yeah,
make
this
contact with
this
these
was
people.
in 94,
There was
95.
no DNA testing. Oh, it was? Okay, so you had basic computers.
So I had the blood test every 3 months, 8 vials of blood. I was an open donor.
Right. Open meaning
Open
you don't
meaning
mind if they come back
they
and
can
get
look me up.
information from you.
And I had to
Sure.
write a biography,
Of
and
your
then I had to
family.
rewrite it because as they turned 18, and the first one was going to be able to, on their own volition, they could come or not.
Sure.
She said, rewrite it because you're not the same person. I'm like, yeah, I'm not, right? So I had to rewrite that and say, oh, by the way, how many are there? So I got this thing back and it was like 19. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
Like, that's a lot, right?
Right.
And then I had my own daughters, that's 20. And then I did a freelance one for a nurse midwife who works with my sister-in-law. And that was, you pay money, you sign a thing, you bring it over. It
Sure.
happened one time.
Right.
One time, and so that was pretty amazing. And and that girl lives in Santa Cruz. So I've actually met her a long time ago. My daughter met her when they were like little kids.
Oh,
so,
cool.
So yeah, it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Between the roller coaster and breaking my back and running Boston and then moving out here and just my wife at the time had chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and we didn't get together. So I was kind of going crazy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to help people out and I thought this would be a good way to do it.
Sure. Right.
So
Yeah. That's so interesting because you weren't thinking about 33andMe or whatever those. When
Yeah,
they came
23andMe.
back, or-
Well, you know, it's funny.
I guess you really didn't need that because they had all your records.
No, they had-
so it wouldn't even have been they were
They had
searching for
they had
it.
my number.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. But the fact that the kids had already met, and some of them still haven't looked me up, and it drives my daughter Anna in Florida kind of crazy. She's like, I want to share you, but I can't. I don't want to. I want to respect their privacy.
See, there's that too.
Yeah. So
Right.
it's all about that. There's a cool idea of how consent works.
Right.
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 And we talk a lot about that in 7th and 8th grade.
Sure.
Because you have to.
Yeah, you do.
You
now, huh?
really have to.
Yeah.
You know, and I tell stories, and a lot of my stories are pedagogical in a way, so that I can help them understand that there are these trials and tribulations. Like I said today. So check this out. First grade teacher at our school, he left. He's in a band. Went over to the Sportsman Saturday night. Right.
Yeah.
He's a guitarist.
Sure.
Shredding.
Yeah, yeah.
So I walk in there, and there's this girl, I won't say her name, but she just turned 21. And my birthday is the 7th of February. Hers is the 8th. So she just turned 21.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we clink glasses. This is a former student of mine, right? And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Her
21.
mom's there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, so what are you doing? She goes, I go, what year are you? She goes, I dropped out of high school. And I was telling my students this today. She goes, I dropped out of high school. I said to the kids, so what do you think I said to her? Oh, you know, like, were you disappointed in her?
Why?
They were asking me
Right,
these
yeah,
questions.
yeah.
I said to her, what are you doing? She goes, oh, I'm working out in the valley, raising horses and llamas and goats. I go, you're doing something you love, huh? Awesome. Like, right? But I said to them, you don't know if you might not go to college or you might go to college. You can go to college when you're 50. I went when I was 40.
Right.
So for Waldorf training, I said, so the main thing is leaving your options open, right? Like, do as well as you can in what you're doing, even if you're not planning on it, because you just don't know.
Right.
Right? And that's kind of how I do my life. I'm like, that's how I teach. That's how I want to go on a trip.
Yeah.
I find out what's possible in the place I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And then I go, and then you go with the flow. Like, oh, you make some kind of reservations for the thing, but it's raining and it's like whale watching. And you're like, no, that's dumb, right? Just go and see what the energy is telling you there. And then ride that.
See where it ends up.
Ride that. Like,
Yeah.
you go to the ocean and you're going to surf. You can't make the wave do what the wave's going to do or not
Sure
do.
not, right.
You gotta sit there and read the waves.
That's kind of the idea of surfing, is to be one with it, not try to change it.
There was a kid a couple years ago, and they have to write these letters to high schools to get into the MAS program at
no kidding.
Monterey. And
Yeah, yeah.
so he's like, I've always loved the ocean. I go, dude, this is so freaking boring. Please stop. You're killing me. So I go, so he was writing his essay on the way up to Santa Cruz. I'm at a birthday party. He just happened to be at Pleasure Point. This is a few years ago. And he walks up off the ledge, and there he is with his dad. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, Mr. Mentor. He goes, yeah, we came up, I was buying a surfboard. I go, that's your essay. Talk about how you were hanging out with your dad, that you went and bought a surfboard with him, that you sit up on the bluff and you watch the waves come in, and you're looking and you can read them and you see what the storms are. That's all science.
Yes.
And that, my friend, is going to be your essay. And he wrote this killer essay. It was
Right.
really, really
Right.
good. And I have a sister now, and she's a little short girl. And I'm always giving her a little business. You know, I give her a little business, right, about being short, about being this, about being that. And I'm like, look, if you can't joke about yourself, why are you always so hard at me? I'm like, because you can take it.
Right.
But
right.
I do it with absolute love, and there's been a few times where I've crossed not a boundary,
No,
but
I know
you
what
know,
you're saying,
yeah, you
right.
get them a
Like,
little bent out of
whoops, a little
shape.
far
You
there,
know? I said, I don't know, can you say a bad word on this thing?
Sure.
So anyway, one day I just said to the boys, I like, just don't be dicks.
Right.
I had to go to the principal's office.
Did you?
And I'm like, And then one day I lived next to the school, and I went home, and I had this Alfredo, and I had a little teeny bit of wine, and I had one class left, and I wasn't thinking.
Yeah.
So I had a little wine. I said this to somebody. I had to go to the principal's office.
Oh, no.
So I went to the principal like 5 times. This is last year, right? And I'm sitting there like, damn, man, this is killing me. So finally at the end, like the fifth time I go in, it's at the end of the year. And I'm talking to the principal. And we have a great principal. Her thing is always, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
Not
Well,
like the
that's
other principal, which was,
fantastic.
I'm going to fire you.
Yeah.
So she goes, look, and I said, look, I know. Like, when I'm good, I'm damn good. And when I'm not, I'm just not.
Really not.
And I said, she goes, you need to spend some time figuring out what you're going to do for next year. So I'm up in Utah with my best friend of 53 years, my friend Sean, and he's out building a chimney. And I'm in there and I'm like, I got nothing to do. So I planned out my whole year in about 6 hours. I sat there and I worked on it. So when I got into school this year, we had this thing where we wanted to meet the kids at the door, which I used to do in the Waldorf world. Mm-hmm. Every day I'm at my door. High five or fist bump or put up my foot, whatever it is, right? On the way in, on the way out of every class, I do this now.
Right.
So I want to meet them. And then there's a group of little kindergartners who walk by. We have this big African-American guy, right? Tall guy.
Yeah.
And he walks with them. And one day I just went, oh, look, it's like little ducklings, right? So now, every single day, he's like, hey, mentor. And like, oh, the ducks are here. And I go out and I give them little high fives, right? Or fist bumps or something like that. So
kindergartners.
Little kindergartners.
You may see them in a couple of years, you know?
Well, and that's the thing. When I'm working at a school, I have a free period. I'm supposed to be doing something. I don't know what. I'll pop into a class. And I'll hey, what are you guys working on? You know?
Yeah,
oh,
really.
Hey, Mr. Mentor, look at him. Oh, this is so good. So they all know me because I'm not just doing it. I'm like, this is actually really cool. Right. Like I went in, I'm like, oh, you guys are working on identity in 2nd grade? We're doing the same thing. We're just doing it in 7th grade. Like, this is a really interesting thing. And then I realized, oh, there's these patterns that happen through the grades. We have to map ATLs. What? Approaches to learning and how they're mapped to what we're teaching and how it's working. And it's like asking a jazz musician, hey, what are you going to play? And can you tell me these notes you're going to be working on? And you're like, no, man, I learned my chops.
I can.
Right? I learned my chops and I'm going to come in and I'm going to play. And this is what Zappa used to say, right? Zappa goes, look, these guys, they can play that same riff 100. They practice it over and over. I don't know what I'm going to play.
Really?
You know, when Zappa would come into play, you know, and he's playing, you know, something off, just crazy. But then you listen to his guitar solo, it's going to be something different every single time.
Is it?
Because he's amazing. Because he's not working from the script. I've been at schools where there's scripted teaching.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, all the 4th graders are on page 38.
I thought it was all like that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's so scientifically in teaching and trying to keep them in. It's so nice to hear somebody that teaches outside the box.
Well, you know, it's funny because,
like, still inside the box.
In Waldorf world, right, you go up with the kids in the grades.
Yeah.
So I did 1st and 2nd, and then I took the 3rd grade, right? I taught something different every day for 8 years.
That's good for you.
And, you know, as a
really
sports writer and journalist, you know, you go in, you're watching a game, you're covering it. You know, there's the basic game, and then there's the interview, and then there's like I developed a sense of how an interview would go with my notes, and then they're walking away and they go, "Hey, by the way, one last thing." You know, like Peter Falk. One last thing I wanted someone to ask you about this thing, right? And it's like, and that was almost always the story. That last little thing that they had to say.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's just fabulous, right? And then somebody's, well, how do you do this? Like my interview notes was a cascade, a river of an idea that would blend and blend and blend. And when I first started writing, I was, oh my God. I stayed up till 3 a.m, checking, watching TV, like writing these stories.
Yeah.
And like when Love Boat came on for the 2nd time, I'm like, oh man, it's like 3:30. I gotta go to bed. Oops, sorry. But I learned how to do it. And you know, you'd have a photographer go out and these guys are like whatever. And a guy comes back one day and he's like, I go, where's the shot? He goes, I didn't get one. I'm like, dude, that's a hole. I'm like, that's a hole in the paper. I have to. So I'm sitting there like, oh man. So I'm like looking. 2 teams played. I have a score from another newspaper, just a score. But I learned that this one team hadn't won all year and they won this game. And I could see which innings they scored in. I'm like, the Mustangs pulled off the victory of the season, blah, 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 blah. So I'm writing this story in like 10 minutes to fill this space.
Yeah.
And then I find some old podunk pictures to stick up in there. But you have to be quick, right? You have to be...
That's pretty initiative.
Well, I mean,
like it.
There's a hole there.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's only so many things you can fill that thing with, right? Hey, I got in the paper this week. Yeah, you just by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah, right.
And I had a column that I wrote for, I don't know, I wrote 6,000 articles. I had a column with my picture on it. And every year my daughter would write one. She was a baby. So I was doing it from her point of view. Kind of making fun of myself,
right.
you know, a little of this, a little of that.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, well, writing a sports column, what's it about? I'm like, it was called In the Game. And for me, it was always like, it's not about, it's a strategy or this or that thing. It's like, what's the human side of this that I'm covering? What's that moment? Like one time I'm with, I don't know, 3 high schools going to the state track championship run. Southwest Airlines. We're flying out of Oakland. We're going down to LA, right? The plane, what was it? What happened? The plane is coming down, and then another plane is coming in at the same time, and this guy pulls up.
Oof.
Right? Like, we're not talking pulls up, we're talking pulls up. 'Cause
Right.
it's like a car accident. And all these girls, like it's insane. And I'm like, holy schmoly.
goes.
That was a scary moment, right?
Yeah.
So you don't know that's going to happen, right?
No, right.
Or like I covered the Raiders for 3 years. So I got to fly around, Al Davis, like little newspapers. So I'm sitting next to Rocket Richard. I mean, not Rocket Richard, but what's the guy's name? They had these amazing athletes on the team, Tim Brown and all these guys, right?
Yeah.
These guys were, first of all, super smart dudes. Like you have to be, you got to be really good at what you do, but you got to be smart enough to be able to play the game, to be able to be in there, because you can't be a dummy.
Yeah.
I mean, within reason.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous flying around with these people and realizing who they were. And before the cuts are made, these guys aren't going to make it right here. 'Cause they're having a hard time. Sure. So I learned a lot about like these big kids, right? They're just playing a sport.
Yeah.
They're making a lot of money, but they're really just people walking around.
I think it's very interesting, and I've said this before. I think it's very interesting or very important for somebody to have at least one thing that they're amazing at, because then they'll go into something else without so much fear, because they know what it's like to be fantastic at something. So what else can I find to be fantastic at? If you never find anything that you're great at, I think it's hard for you to do anything. So I think these kids you're talking about, they're already fantastic.
They're already.
So I think it's a different crowd of kids.
Yeah,
You can lead them into something that that maybe normally they wouldn't, but they'll have just a built-in confidence in themselves.
Yeah. Because
they're good at something else.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's really cool too is like I had a kid. He's new to the school. He's from Afghanistan.
Right.
All right. So he's writing a diamond poem. A diamond poem is 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, 3, 2, 1. And it's like a noun, 2 adjectives, 3 gerunds, the ing, and then 2 nouns that go with the top word and 2 nouns that go with the bottom word. And there's a transition in the middle. It's kind of an intricate thing, but it's pretty simple. It's like 14. Yeah. Is that what it is? 14 words. So he wrote this. He writes this poem, right?
Sure.
And he goes, Afghanistan, it can be summed up with the cars. Like it's chaotic. It's crazy. The cars are going everywhere. When you get there, you're like, what is going on if you're not from there? He goes, but it all works.
Right.
And he wrote this poem. And I go, you summed up your whole culture in 14 words, dude. And this is so amazing. He came back to the school. He's in high school. He came back, Mr. Mentor, you remember that poem? I'm looking at him like, I don't remember this kid. Because he's much taller, like 2 years later.
Yeah, right.
And he goes, I wrote that poem about, the Afghanistan one. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, and he was so proud of that poem that the rest of the poems he wrote, it was the final block in 8th grade. The rest of the poems he wrote, he put some time into them.
Right.
I'm teaching, how a sonnet works. It's iambic pentameter. It's short, long, short, long, short, long,
Not much,
short, long,
no.
short, long.
Right.
It's the heartbeat.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I tell the kids, hey, put your hand over your heart and just do a short line. It goes.
Right.
So that's what Steiner talks about breathing, right? Now you're doing it to the beat of something that is absolutely normal in your life. And he says, Steiner had this thing, rhythm replaces strength. If you do a little bit each time, you get it done. You have to do it all at once, the dishes, the lawn, whatever, right? That's going to be really difficult.
Right.
And that kind of poem that Shakespeare did,
Yeah.
right? Fabulous, really cool. Even Shakespeare, I was like, Sonnet 130 is a troll on sonnets, right?
Right.
So then I started looking at original pronunciation, because some of them don't rhyme, and then original pronunciation, because it was a cosmopolitan place in the 1600s. People from all over the world were there. How we say English wasn't the same. It was different. Then you start looking at it, and he talks about the hour and the whore. It's a double entendre, right? It sounds the same. The word whore and hour are the same.
Right.
And the upper crust are hearing hour, and the lower crust, who are all in the same theater, are hearing whore because he's making fun of the upper crust people, and they still love it, and the lower people, and he's playing to the tune of both of them, right? And it's fabulous. Then we look at rap, and there's a Vox thing on the history of rap, and you look at like Eminem, and you look at some of these rappers, and I don't know much about rap. These guys are Shakespeare people.
LL Cool J.
There's a beat that goes to it. There's a rhyming pattern. There's internal rhymes. There's rhymes that cross the punchline, come into the next one. And then you got Eminem, who has a story and a beat that just, and multiple internal rhymes.
Yeah.
You know, I write rhymes like dimes. It's MF Doom. And you're like, oh, it's so good. And incorporating jazz and all these, like Etta James, or putting stuff into this music that's fabulous, right? And you look at it and you go, like, people are like, oh, it's rap. It's like, it's black music. I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It's fabulous, because if you look at it and you see the breakdown of how it actually works, this is where I love the science of writing and words and stuff like that. You go, oh no, this is fabulous. This is cool stuff.
Yeah.
Just blow you away.
Yeah.
So.
I thought that was really interesting what you were saying about the Afghanistan kid, how he saw order in the chaos.
Yeah.
You know, that's very interesting. I wonder whether he carried that into his future writings. You know, because that's I like the way you put that together.
Yeah. Well, there's when I used to fly back to Massachusetts. I was a long hair. Get my hair cut once a year, and I went into this place to get my hair cut. Right? My wife goes, "Hey, go down this place. It's in Springfield." I'm like, "All right, it's like a ladies' place." I'm like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
So I get in there, and this is dude. He's got like the salt and pepper, really short hair.
Yeah.
And he's cutting this woman's hair. He's not even looking at her.
Really?
And he's cutting, and he's like standing behind her, and I'm like, oh my God! Like, and this is the guy who's going to do it. And I didn't know his name was Bill Ochoa. He owned the place Ochoa's. He's cutting her hair. I'm like, this is going to be the worst.
Yeah.
She gets up. I'm like, that woman. There's not a better haircut that woman's going to get.
Really?
So he starts and he cuts my hair, and every year I'd go back and he would charge me a really good rate, and I go, dude, this is the only place I ever get my hair cut. And he goes, I'm honored to cut your hair. I'm like, I'm honored to come. His shirt, his motto was art from chaos.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So he died. He had like pancreatic cancer. So I go back there, and the guy who inherited his scissors, he was cutting my hair. I said, what's the deal? He goes, you know what his secret was? I go, no. He goes, he looked in the mirror. So when he cut, he saw what the client was seeing. And he could see exactly how it was going to look in the mirror, what that person was seeing. And that's how he did it. And I'm like, that is crazy.
Right.
Like, how did you develop that style? He's like the Anthony Bourdain of haircutting guys, right?
But he also saw the finished product in his head too. So
yeah, and he had
that's
a vision.
Artistic.
And he had a vision.
A vision of
and I just that stuck with me for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite often think of how art comes from, like all things, right? Like, you know what a Chladni plate is?
No.
Right. So a Chladni plate is just like a steel plate, and you sprinkle powder on it, like baby powder. And then you take a violin bow, and you play a note. Whee, and it goes.
Yeah.
And it looks like a snowflake.
Yeah.
And then a D will be different from an E or an A or a B, right? Or B flat. And it creates this, and it does the same creation each time for that note. And I thought, that is art from chaos.
Right.
That's taking
every
and that's
note
like,
has its own.
Yeah. And so my big thing for the kids is like, look, don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid to, dive into something with love, right? As much as you possibly can. And like, just feel what you're doing and actually look, you're not here to impress me. I might be impressed, but that's not why you're doing it. Do it so that you like it. Because I can't prescribe what's good for you, what's bad for you. That's why I don't give advice.
Right.
Right. I mean, if somebody really asks for it, maybe. But what I'm trying to do is help them see what their vision is. Like, and every artist will tell you the same thing, right? You can't write for songs for people. You got to write it for you, for what you feel is the right thing. So like when I used to draw cards for people. And I always screwed them up. I always got something off, right?
Yeah.
After 6 minutes. They were supposed to be after 8 minutes, and I did this card. And she goes, they're supposed to be after 8. I go, yeah, well, you guys start early.
Yeah, right.
But what I realized was like when I go to pick out a card for you, say, I'm going to buy you a birthday card. No, and then you go, and you see it.
Yeah.
Like you just
That
see
fits.
it. So the same thing goes for my photography. I go out and I'm down at Casa Verde, my favorite beach. And I'm like the other day, I missed a good sunset, but the clouds were crazy. And I switched over to black and white, and I nailed these shots in black and white.
Really?
Because what I learned when I was in my extra year of high school, because I stayed back to be with this woman.
Yeah.
I had this great teacher, and she said that black and white is form and color is shape, or like something like that. Like one of them is like if you take the color away, you can see the shape of how things work in the composition of that. And the other one is adding to the texture and all those things. And it happens, as you know, it happens in music, right? It happens amazingly in music because like you combine your bass and you combine your rhythm and you've got your lead and you've got for the flute in or whatever you're putting in there. This mixture is what makes the beauty, and you know when it's good. So I saw this thing today. You know John Bonham. He was the drummer for Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, my favorite band.
Righteous.
So they're doing Stairway, right? Everybody knows Stairway to Heaven, right? So they finish, and John Bonham goes, "That was a great take." What, Jimmy? So Jimmy Page is just rubbing his chin. He's like, "Well, I think we got one more good take in us." And Bonham's pissed. So he's pissed, right? So when they're leading up to the drums coming in, and the drums come in with this ferocity, and he comes out, and they go up to the playback booth, and he goes, "You were right, you bastard."
Because he pissed him off.
Because he's like, "You're right, we did have one better in it, and it was way better, you know." And
just had to get him there.
And that's the thing, right? That's the thing. Like you have to know when to egg stuff on, and there's always going to be good, and there may be. I mean, you have to know when there's a time to stop.
Yeah.
You know, as a painter, I do painting too.
Sure.
So there's a time when you get to the end and you're like, that's it.
Right.
And stopping for artists, I mean, that might be the hardest thing.
I'm wondering about that. When I'm painting something, I can't ever be done. It's never right.
The Mona Lisa was a 10-year, you know.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, like
That's good to
they
hear.
said 4, but they worked on it for like 10 years, right?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time to work on a small painting.
Oh, I'm telling you. I've seen them there. There's layers of it too. It's kind of a deep painting, isn't it? Over the years, I think people have tried to touch it up or whatever. But
oh yeah, and then like one of the things in the Waldorf world was I'm learning how if you looked at art and you looked at the development of the human kind, like the Egyptian art has the first stepping out, and it's from the side, right? And then some of the artwork that I used to see when I was a kid in Massachusetts with these big-headed kids or people with these little bodies, and like their proportion was pretty horrible, really bad. And then we started getting into realistic, like super realistic, right? And then they started getting into small, like just this part, just like a portrait. And then it was just a small thing. And then it started getting abstract and getting way off, and even smaller and smaller and more detailed. And you look at how humans have come, right? And we've gone from this staticness to this motion, and then kind of coming back to a staticness again. And a lot of it's online, and some of it is just, I have a friend here, my friend Hanif, who does some of the murals in the area, and he's been doing around. He's also in The Basement, which is a band that plays around here.
Okay.
Probably one of the most talented humans I've ever met, right? And I teach his kid. I have his kid in 7th grade. I look at what he does and how he does it and puts it together, and some of it is digital art. And it's just insane how beautiful it is right now. Someone posted a piece the other day, and I have it on my phone. I save things for screensavers because it comes up and I just go, right? There's a guy named Android Jones who does this just similar kind of art. There was a piece out at Burning Man in 2012, and I walked in, I just looked at it, and just like your jaw drops. You can feel the piece. It's just so expressive. And that's one of the reasons why I go there. Like my principal asked me this year, there was a woman who came in for subbing or something. So, Mr. Peter, you got to meet this woman. So I walk into the library, and she comes up and gives me a hug, and I'm like, I don't know her. This is a thing that most burners would do.
Yeah.
But I'm in a school setting. And I'm like, oh. So we were talking, and we're going back and forth. And the principal, we're sitting in that lounge, and she goes, why do you guys go? And I go there to refill my bank, my energy bank, and my creative aspects of life. And I get to be totally me, and 100% me. And man, being 100% yourself is a fabulous thing, and it's hard to do. We wear masks every day. You know, you have to wear the mask of massage therapist and, you know, sound engineer and teacher and all those things, and you got to stay within the boundaries, and there's all these rules. And I'm not a big rule guy. I mean, I like to learn them and then break them, you know.
Right.
In the best possible way. But that's the thing. Like, you look at art, you look at anything we do. Everything we do has an artistic sense to it, right? And that's the thing where you can't control it. The more we try to control, I always fear like control is an equivalent of fear. It's sclerotic. It binds you, right? It's like you really can't control anything. You even like decisions, like pretty much they're kind of mostly made for us no matter what we do, right? Right? And fear is not a bad thing. I like to tell the kids, it's fear is good information.
Yeah.
It's good to be fearful near the edge of a cliff.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
It's also good to know how not to kill yourself, you know, how to die and how those things can happen to you, right?
Yeah.
And yet when we go, we go.
Right.
And that loss thing is really interesting because when my mom passed, with my sister, my brothers took care of getting rid of everything, and I would have been horrible. But there was her wedding ring, like the band.
Yeah.
And my sister goes, "Do you want this?" I go, "Really? Does anybody else want it?" It's on a gold chain. I'm like, "Sure." So I put it on, and I realized it was hanging over my heart, right here.
Right.
And my mom was always there. And I'm like, this is really all I wanted, because my mom is, my mom's totally alive. She's just in me now.
Right.
They're fabulous, right? And it was funny because I went to Kauai with, I was with my ex-wife and my daughter. We still have a great relationship, and my son.
Yeah.
And we met an older couple and two women and a guy, and they were from New Jersey, and they were coming for Todd Fest. Todd Rundgren has Todd Fest there.
Really?
And she went out with Todd Rundgren a long time ago.
Really?
And now she goes to this thing. And she gave me a necklace that was from it, and it was an infinity sign with the word love, and it's silver. And I hung that on that
same
necklace.
chain. Yeah.
So that infinity love with the chain and my mom's ring,
Right.
and my mom and my dad's initials are in the ring, was hanging there for the longest time. And then my son broke it off by accident. But I realized you don't need the materialistic thing.
Right. Right.
It's nice to have.
It's nice to have.
And I
though.
will fix it. But,
right.
you know, you never know. One year we had a walkout. There was a shooting at one of the schools. The 7th and 8th grade were protesting that going on. And the kids had somebody came out with a rainbow flag cardboard, and it said something on it. I liked it, so I put it up in my room. And I always told my kids when they come in, this is a safe space.
Right.
For LGBTQ, wherever you need, for whatever. We don't have to talk about it, but you can just come and know it's safe. So one year, it was right after COVID, I came in, and it was gone. Like, it was off the wall, gone. And I got so sad.
Really?
And I got a little upset.
Yeah.
And I was upset. The kids knew I was upset.
I've been violated.
I've been violated. So then I step back and I go, it's just a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, whatevs, right? The 8th graders got a piece of wood, little curved ends, about that big, wood burned in, piece on that thing, painted it multicolored, flip it over, it's got all their names signed to me.
Oh, cool.
And I went, you guys.
Really?
I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys, this is like, that's the reward.
Sure. Right.
That's the reward.
Yeah. That's too cool.
There's a thing about being a hero, and heroism is there's a risk, there's a risk, and one of the things is no reward. Like, there's this 4 aspects, and like you're not seeking it, but it's awfully nice to receive that acknowledgement, that recognition. You know, so that for me. That's been my blessing, is that when I see these kids and they come back or whatever, and I run into them, and I've met a couple of them out at festivals and stuff.
Sure, right.
It's,
Can't help but run into them.
They grow up.
Yeah, they grow up, right?
They grow up.
Like I said, you might not even recognize them because they're different humans now.
I was
half taller.
when I was up in the city, and this young girl walks by with another girl. One girl had like pink hair, and this girl was stunning, but she's really young. And I'm not going to be like the keeper guy, right? She walks by and she's like looking at me, and I'm like looking at her, And I go, she goes, "Are you Mr. Mentor?" And I go, "Yeah." And I look at her, and this girl, I haven't seen her since 2004.
Wow.
Like 20 years, okay? She was in my daughter's kindergarten class.
Oh.
They lived in this little place.
I see.
They lived in this house up in El Sobrante. The house was lazured, which is like painting technique, which goes from like intense to not intense or the other way.
Yeah.
I worked with, I thought her mom, but her mom was 16. Her grandma, right,
All right.
was, I don't know, maybe 34, 35.
Sure, right.
Her great-grandmother worked with me, and the great-great-grandmother lived in the house. She was like in 80s, right?
Wow.
All of them, this just generational
5
thing in this house.
generations, right.
And when they were little, they were Waldorf kids. They got the 16-year-old girls in the neighborhood that dress as fairies at each of the different houses, right? And we walked from house to house, and with these little girls, in kindergarten, and they're all dressed up. And I'm like, what a magical experience. I mean, even I was like, this is a magical experience. This was the girl who was walking around with my daughter.
This was one of them.
Way
Right,
back in the
right.
day. Like this little, she was like, 6 years old. And she remembers me.
Right.
And I'm just like, I mean, it was one of those, this just happened. This was one of those moments where I'm like, God, I love my life.
Right. Yeah.
Because I literally will run into somebody wherever I go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was in Bisbee, Arizona. My best friend's wife grew up there. It's a mining town. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's like the mine is one of those huge pits with a crane that you can't even see, right? So we get down there and Los Lobos is playing. It's a benefit. They had to cancel twice. It's COVID. It's the end of COVID. So we walk to this like AAA baseball stadium, right? And they're going to play. And I walk in with my friend Sean and his wife Norma. And this woman comes up to me and she goes, "Were you in Camp 1111 at Burning Man?" Which is the camp I'd been in. And I'm like, yeah.
Matter of fact, I was.
Norma's looking at me like, "You mother, like, this is my town," right? And I picked her up at the airport in Reno to come to her first event out on the playa, which is what Burning Man's at. And when we got into the Gerlach, there's a bar there. So during COVID, I was in the bar, in the back room, teaching on Zoom my kids, right?
That's
and then I'd
funny.
go out
Right,
and
right.
I was doing this building project.
Sure.
And so I walked into there with her, and this guy goes, "Hey, teacher man." She's like, "Oh my God."
Yep.
So I feel like I've tapped this place pretty well.
Yeah.
And I could skip Burning Man this year. I probably will go because my family's going. They inherited a camp, and
I see, right.
and I kind of want to do that. Get my surgery. Maybe pull my kid out, maybe not. Depends on what happens. His mom got in a motorcycle accident, and she's recuperating and going through a lot of trauma. And so I'm playing it by ear like I always do.
Yeah. Right,
And then I'm like, it's a little scary, but
Right.
I did this before when I was 40, and now I'm 63, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
I remember being, because I coached the kids in football, and years later, I'm walking into a 7-Eleven. "Hey, Coach Blazin." Like, "Hey, what's up?"
Right,
Just trying to remember who they are. Oh, shoot.
Well, and that's the thing. You can kind of go like, "Hey, tell me your name."
Yeah,
Right?
right.
Because, dude, I taught 25 kids for 6 years.
Well, see, I didn't have that many. But
Well,
right.
Like
But yeah.
25 the same kids for 6. I've taught 400 of the last 8 years.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right? So like now, like I've
right.
taught so many kids, but back then those kids were like, those were my kids.
Yeah.
They're still my kids. I love
Right.
those kids.
Yeah.
They're not kids anymore.
No,
they're
grown
26 years
adults
old.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's a trip. It's a trip. But I definitely have not. My body's gotten older, but my spirit and my brain and everything's still clicking. And
Yeah.
my parents were that way until the end in their 90s. Like
Perfect.
sharp as a tack. And
Yeah. That's killer.
you got to be fortunate if you keep your brains together.
Now, you brought up a program in the beginning for men, and you brought up the fourth person that has told me about Breakthrough.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's a
there's
men's
Break
group.
Free for women.
Is there?
And that's a totally different program.
Okay. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah,
Because
let me unpack it
unfortunately,
quickly.
like when somebody tells me that, it's like, well, that must be a personal thing that they may not want to talk about. So I'm just going to steer around that.
Yeah.
But now you're the fourth person that has told me about it, but I haven't asked anything about it. So
Yeah, I'll give you
so
that.
I'll
Spill the tea for
you.
you.
You seem like the kind of person that is open and wouldn't be hurt by.
So this guy, Fred Jealous, his son is Jim Jealous. I think he was head of the NAACP.
Okay.
Fred's a white guy from Maine, married a black woman. They have this beautiful kid who was the head of the NAACP.
Yeah, I see.
So he's in Maine. His father's a jerk. Would beat him with a 2x4, like horrible. So he goes, I would escape out into the woods and just be gone all day, and I'd come in at night, eat my food, go to bed. So he goes, I go to Europe and I see people walking hand in hand. I'm like, whoa, this is not men. Like, well, this is different. So he comes back and he started working, helping people, and he did it alone, and that didn't work. And he did it with this woman and another person. It was kind of working. Then he realized when he did it with a group of men, that really worked well. So he taught this one group of men these different tools. Those men became facilitators. Other men become allies. And allies are people who just kind of come and hold the space, keep the time, and watch the thing. So I get into this thing. My life has just been flipped upside down. I've moved.
Right.
I've had the surgery. I went to Burning Man, blah, blah, blah. So it's like February 2013. And they go, hey, we got you in. We're going to pay for you. So it was down in Carmel at the time. So I get down there, and the guy who's running it, Fred's there, and he's the guy who did it. But the guy who's running it is Lee Garland, and he's been doing it for 25 years, and he was one of the first guys. So Lee looks at us and he goes, so I know what you guys are thinking. Most of you are looking around going, these guys are pretty fucked up. What am I doing here? Right? He goes, so you think you can fix yourself and you haven't yet. So how come? How come you haven't fixed yourself?
Right.
Because we actually need some help.
Yeah.
We need some. And men really need to deal with men, because a lot of our issues are things that we were taught as a kid, which is we should know it all. We shouldn't be weak. We should be able to fix things. We should be that person.
Bottle it up.
And guess what? That doesn't work very well.
Right.
And then there's these traumas that happen to us and all that stuff that happens, right? So basically what you do is you go in, you have this check-in with people, and then they would have a break. No, they would have up on stage, a person would go up and another person would talk to him, and they would go through a strategy of something that was going to happen that night. Maybe it's carried trauma. And one person would volunteer to do it in front of everybody. Then you have a break and eat, which is sort of like a Waldorf thing, is you have these moments of in and out, this breathing. And then you go in a room. So it's like 3 guys in the program, a facilitator, and an ally keeping the time. And each guy would go for maybe 15 or 20 minutes of whatever that thing was going on to bust through that stuff.
Right.
So you do that, and then you come back, there's another check-in, and then you go. And then we did the 7 and 7, so we were doing that outside that. So 39 weeks, something like that. And there were a couple of all Saturday ones, and there was an all weekend one. We actually stayed in the place. That was the sex weekend. And we're like, sex weekend with a bunch of guys. But basically talking about some of the stuff that we do around sex and how that shapes us and forms us and makes us think in certain ways and what we got to do and inadequacies and all those things. And some of that stuff is like, one of the things we did, okay, you're going to bring your parents into the room. Not really. But you're bringing your parents in, the time of where you might have had some trauma with them, and have a conversation with them. You're your age when you're now your age, what you are, but you're remembering what it's like to be you. But you're standing up for the little person, the little you, that you would have liked to have had an advocate.
Right.
They're coming in at the age they were when you were that age. So you want to bring them in not as they are now, but as they were. And you can have this conversation. So I'm sitting there, and I said, Dad, your anger that you gave me, I don't want it. And I never wanted it, and I never really liked it. And Mom, your passivity towards what was going on really didn't help me out.
Right.
And you've done wonderful things with me, both of you, but those things really, really hurt. And I don't want them anymore, and I'm giving them back.
Right.
And then you can actually tell your parents, you can talk to them until you want. You can tell them to sit down. You can tell them not to say anything. you can tell them to leave, and you can actually say, and I invite you to come back. Whenever I want you to come back, you can come back.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah.
I went to a baseball game. I'm a little kid. My dad comes. He goes, we're in the car. We're riding home. He goes, you get any hits? I go, yeah, I hit the ball really far, but they caught him. Those weren't hits.
Right. Just pull all the
I'm
wind
never
right
playing
out
this.
of you.
I'm never playing this sport again.
Right.
I stopped. I played lacrosse for 6 years. Like,
Really?
screw it. I'm not playing baseball.
Right.
I just wanted my dad to give me a hug.
Yeah.
That's all I really wanted from him.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted my mom to stand up a little bit more for us, right? So it's Thanksgiving. It snows. My brother and I are flying back to Massachusetts. We fly into Boston. It's a fresh coat of snow. It's like a fresh canvas. It takes us forever to get back to Longmeadow because there's like 2 feet of snow on the ground. We're driving. And we get there, and my father was going. His fingernails were a little black. Stuff was going. I actually knew this is it, right?
Yeah.
So I go in, and I see my dad, and he's in a hospital bed, but he's in his condo.
Yeah.
So I go up to him, and I just put my arms around him, and I hugged him.
Yeah.
So I got my hug. Because you
Yeah,
give a hug,
yeah.
you get a hug, right?
Right.
I go, Dad, I love you.
Yeah.
I go, Steven's here, Billy, Lisa, Raymond, Patty. We're all here. Got Mom's back.
Yeah.
And I left. I went to go see Bohemian Rhapsody,
Yeah.
the Queen movie,
Sure.
in a dead mall. There were 3 of us. It's 11 o'clock. I get out. It's
The
1 in
whole
the morning.
theater.
My friend's getting out of a bar. I party with him till 3. I get home at 3:30. I wake up at 7:30. My brother goes, Dad passed.
Yeah. Right.
So I got to say we had Mom's back.
Right.
That's what he was waiting for.
Right.
I told him I loved him. I got
Right.
my hug. I did all the stuff. And I had done the work all the way up to that point.
Yeah.
So it helps you do the work up to that point.
Yeah.
And the next day, everybody leaves because there's a dead body. They got to wheel my dad out. Here's my dad. He's 92. He's got a full head of hair. It's curly. It's gray. They're wheeling him out. I see him. I put my fingers in his hair. The last thing I said to my dad was, "You are really cute." Right? So that's what it does. It kind of helps you understand the processes of things that were going on, how to listen, how to unpack a lot of stuff.
Right,
And when my
right.
friend's dad died, we were out at the playa. We were out in Burning Man. Mm-hmm. My friend's dad died. He wanted to put a bullet in his dad's head. He hated his dad.
Sure.
His dad and his mom got married 3 times to each other.
Really?
Right? He gambled the money. He was just not a. He was just, and he lost his mind, and they had to take care of him when he was a gibberish man. So his father dies. We're out in the playa. He's got a what do you call it? A trailer for like
A mobile home or something? Or?
yeah, it's like the one you pull with your truck though.
Oh, okay.
Fourth
Yeah,
wheel.
yeah.
Fifth wheel. So he's in there, and I have a buddy with me, and I go, "Hey, will you hold space?" He's like, "Yeah." I go, "Hey, Sean, I know you're going through a lot of stuff. Would you be willing to do this?" So I facilitated him. I had him bring his parents in.
Right
He
on.
got to say what he wanted to say.
Yeah.
He told his mom. I told his mom stuff. I was like, "Whoa, you're pretty hard on your mom." But I'm not. I'm just thinking that.
Not here-
And
oh,
then,
I see, yeah.
and he told his dad. He's like, he's so pissed at his dad. Whew. And my friend was sitting there. He's from Baltimore. Sean's from. He lives in Vegas now. Sean just, you could see it.
Really?
You could see it. And he left, and the space he left, I forgot to cleanse it because I studied Qigong. And
Sure,
when you
yeah,
do
yeah.
this stuff, you got to cleanse that space. This dude pulls in there, and he tried to kill me. He literally came at me 3 times in that space. So this guy was off his freaking rocker. And I'm like, dude, I got to be careful.
Yeah.
I got to
right.
be careful. After this happened, and Sean had to go back and do the funeral and all that stuff, he comes to Burning Man, and he starts dancing. He goes, "I haven't danced since I was in middle school."
Really?
My dad had such a damper on me, and now I feel free of this energy. And now he loves to dance. And I brought this guy to Burning Man in 2019. My dad had passed. We worked in the temple. The temple is this huge thing. We built it up in
Yeah,
Oakland.
right.
He was like, "I don't know what I'm going to bring there. What can I have to offer?" I go, "Well, let me think, dude. You're a trained chiropractor. You're a master carpenter. And you're a trained chef." Like he's working on the seas this lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And I go, "What could you possibly bring to a camp?" Right? But dude, one day he spent it must have been like 7 hours adjusting people. There were 3 chiropractors adjusting people in our camp. People would just come in and they gifted it.
Sure.
And that's part of it. It's a gifting society. It's not a barter.
Yeah.
Like, what do you bring there? Like,
Right.
what do you bring to the table?
Right.
And look, here we are. We're sitting at this table. So you bring your healing efforts. You bring your speech. You bring your care. You bring your gaze. You bring your presence. And you know, I come in. We had this conversation, right? You're
Yeah.
like, hey, you ever do this? I'm like, nah, I never done this. But I'm like, I feel at home,
Yeah.
right? This is a good place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right? So, and men have to deal with men and women need to deal with women.
Right.
It just has to happen. I've always been in women's roles. Like I'm a teacher, right?
That's true, right?
I had a girlfriend in college. I'd go to her suite. And we'd all be sitting there talking. When I broke my legs, I watched a lot of soap operas, so I knew all the guiding light and all that stuff. And then the guys would come. Oh, there's the guys coming. We got to put on makeup. I'm like, what am I, chopped liver?
Right.
But I was comfortable to them, right?
Sure.
But I also realized, like at a certain point, that I had to have my man side. Like I had to like start
Sure.
owning that stuff.
Right.
And man, I have to say, like, when you become confident in yourself, that's sexy as hell,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And not cocky, but confident.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I gained something over the last few years. Like people are like, how's it feel to be 50? Like, how's it feel to be 50? Like, it was crazy. I broke up with my wife. I met this pump woman. I ended up going to Burning Man. I got somebody pregnant. I had this baby. I'm like, what the hell? My life, it blew up in the most fabulous way
In a
possible.
good way. Yeah.
50s were great.
Right.
And I entered my 60s. I shattered my collarbone.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
what's the deal here? It was funny because I realized not this New Year's, but the year before, this whole horrible thing happened to me. Because I don't want to get into it, but I literally said, okay, I'm done. I cut this energy, right? And then I was free of that thing that was holding me back that I couldn't let go of. And once you let go and you don't have any fear
Yeah.
and there's no expectation and you work out of love,
Yeah.
everything else after that is just a slight adjustment to the thing that's coming toward you.
Right. Right.
And sometimes the thing that coming toward you, for me, was the roller coaster, or was the falling off the toboggan, or the breaking my arm when I was 3 when the fat kid fell on me, right? And I realized, like, I don't need to be broken. I just need to break the energy tie and then move into the new space,
Yeah.
right? And that was an epiphany for me,
Yeah.
right? And like, a few years ago, 8 years ago, just before I got this job, I was at a festival and I got punched in the face by a tweaker. It was crazy, right? It was one of those moments I was like, holy schmoly.
Right.
But I realized, I was like, I keep getting these assaults to me, which is sort of the wake-up call. And Steiner actually talks about breaking bones being a spiritual experience. Nobody thinks of it that way. They're like, I broke my arm. Like, yeah.
Right.
And then what has that taught you? I mean, it taught me 2 broken legs and I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
It taught me how to be patient.
Right.
It taught me how to be observant, because there I was, right? And it taught me, like, after that, man, life's gravy. And guess what? You can make up your mind on that tomorrow. You
Yeah.
can do it right now.
But you can hold on to it forever.
You can hold on
I
to it
came
forever.
out to California when I was, I guess about 10 or 12 years ago now. So I was in mid 40s or so.
Yeah.
Very closed off, I never danced in my life. Never. I would never do anything like that. But I went to a party up in San Francisco. Somebody gave me a couple of mushrooms and I don't know what else was, Special K, but a little tiny.
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
And it's like, let's just go have some fun. Man, I danced all night long. Every time I've gone back there since, drug-free even, I'm dancing. And it's like, I don't know what it took to break through. I don't know why I was so afraid of being in public and, making an ass out of myself or something.
Yeah.
It hangs
Yeah.
with you so badly. And once you break through,
Once you break
once
through.
you break through that
Yeah.
and go, hey, nobody laughed at me. And I had a fantastic time.
And
It's like, wake up, man.
That's the truth of it. I do weddings. I've done like 13,
Do ya?
14 weddings. And I always tell the bride and groom the same thing. I help them design their little, their ceremony. But
Yeah.
I always tell them the same thing. There are only 2 people who matter at a wedding. You know who they are?
Who?
The bride, because everybody wants the bride to
It's
have
the
that fairy
bride.
tale thing, and themselves.
And them, right.
The guests come, they want to make sure they looked okay. The only person who cares about the groom is his mom. And not even the best man at times, like, oh, the ring, oh crap, what did I do with it? Right? And it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of true, right?
Kind of true.
And it's like when the kids are getting up to do monologues in front of their parents and everything, I have them do this a lot before they ever get to that point, right? But I always tell them, like, first of all, I do it really quick, and they get up and they get off. I teach them the 12 clap, the golf clap. It's like.
Right.
Stop. 12 claps. That's it. Nice and quiet.
Never
right?
heard that.
So
That's
I get them coming up and going and going. So by the time they get up there, right, they're able to stand in front of people, which is the hardest, like public speaking.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
They get to feel like they can be themselves.
Yeah.
And confident and know that there was another point I was trying to make. Even I derail myself sometimes.
I do it all the time.
But most of the time, I do come back around to that place. My kids, when I was a Waldorf teacher, they would get me telling a story just so they wouldn't have to work. I'm like, all right, I'm on to you guys.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, there were some teachers like that where you could just keep asking them questions, and they just keep rolling and rolling pretty soon.
Yeah. So like, and I actually did learn that through the wedding thing. The wedding thing was, and it's funny because I get to say weird things in my life. Like my parents are the parents of the kids that I taught. Yeah. They're also my parents. And then I go, my brother married me, and I married my sister because we did weddings within the family, right? And when I started doing the weddings, my friend goes, I want to get married. I go, all right, I get my thing. And he goes, hey, my brother wants to get married first, so I married his brother. And then he goes, hey, my mom wants to get remarried, so I married his mom. And he goes, my cousin wants to get married out in Lima, and I go. So I married his cousin. I go, dude, are you going to get married? He goes, yeah. So finally I married him, right?
Oh, this is all at the same time?
This was in 4 or 5 years,
I see.
Right?
Okay, right.
Then his mom passed. So I did her funeral.
Yeah.
So that one family, I did 4 weddings and a funeral, which is absolute the truth, right? But it was a real thing, right? And it's kind of funny that I've been able to do this thing to see. Like what I do is I interview the groom and the bride separately, and I go, hey, how'd you guys meet, right? So my friend was telling the story that he was paying a bill for his brother. So he goes into mailboxes, etc., and he's going to buy a stamp, and he doesn't stick, and he goes, puts his glasses up, and he peels it, and she goes, why do people do that? He goes, well, I'm an optometrist, and it's because they're nearsighted. And she's like, oh, this guy's full of shit. So he invites her to a Super Bowl party. And then they end up together. Yeah. She has a daughter and a son. The son ends up getting leukemia. They 5 years of fighting that, and they're an amazing couple. Right. And I call that the case of the lick and stick stand. It was her last day on the job.
Oh, no kidding.
She had 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And he was paying a bill for his brother. So she stayed open a little extra for this guy coming in at the very last minute, and he was doing this favor for someone, and that's how they met.
The universe.
The universe is conspiring to help us succeed. Yeah. And that's written in The Alchemist, in the introduction to The Alchemist. Mm.
That's amazing.
Have you ever read that book?
I have not.
Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
So I pick up the stuff that I use from Waldorf, from philosophy, from talking to human beings in the middle of nowhere, and then talking to God, because that was actually pretty good.
Yeah. We had an amazing conversation today, man. I'm sure glad you came in.
I'm sure glad that you asked me to come in.
What a blast.
Yeah, and I was tired when I got in here. Now I'm all jazzed.
Yeah, right? You're going to go up and stay up for 2 hours.
It's all that New England clam chowder I had.
All right, my brother. Good to see you again.
Pleasure.
All right.
I'll see you on Saturday, maybe.
All right. Yeah, perfect. All right. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Appreciate you watching. If you got any value out of it, hit the subscribe or like. Send it to somebody. Love you guys. Have a good one.